we've been going through this diet confusion. So now, let's just cut to the chase. What is the healthy, safe, and sustainable way to lose weight? The way I can keep it off, and not yo-yo diet, and gain it all back and more? Well, the answer will shock you. The answer is simple, and it has been around for years. I didn't say it's easy, I said it's simple. And because of that, the diet industry tries to confuse you just to make money. They can't make money off the truth. And here's the truth.
In 40 years, I've watched every diet come and go. I've watched the Scarsdale diet come and go, the Pritikin, the Zone. Atkins has come and gone several times. Now it's paleo, then it's keto, then it's, count your macros. The reality of it all, folks, is at the bottom of it, you have to ask yourself, is what you're doing sustainable? Because if it's not, you're not going to be able to keep the weight off. And so what you have to understand is that truly long-term success comes from a change in a lifestyle, right? That you start making more positive food selections in a way that you know is sustainable. But in the world of dieting, it's all about these strong, hard parameters that you can't violate or you fail. But consider the impact of this. Small changes, so long as they're sustainable, create massive results over the course of time. So if you really want to have successful weight loss, what you're going to have to do is make changes to your behaviors, because that's where the root of the problem begins. Your weight was really never the issue. The issue was your choices and decisions.
The point is everyone needs to figure out that this isn't just for 6 weeks. This isn't just because you're going to a family reunion. This isn't just because you're going to go to some high school reunion. This is a lifestyle change, meaning it is a slower process, but it's a permanent process. And these changes become permanent. So they can't expect to be changing all their lifestyle in 3 days. They have to be patient with themselves. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. But in the end, it gets easier and easier.
Well, if the goal is to lose fat while maintaining or increasing in lean muscle, then it's going to be done through food and exercise. You're going to have to exercise your body properly. You have to eat to feed the muscle. You're going to have to eat to starve the fat. You're going to have to eat and use food, real food, to basically ignite your own body's ability to lose weight properly.
And so ideally in your dietary requirements, you want to stay away from processed foods. You want to try and get as best foods as possible. Just basically how they were made, how food was made. That's how you want to eat it. Raw, organic, those are the best types.
I have a saying, if God made it, it's good. If man made it, it's bad. Man processes food, puts it in a box, in a can, in a bar. That generally your body, I don't see how your body identifies that as food. Real food, I say if it flies, if it runs, if it grows, that's real food. And by eating those foods, it has phytonutrients and fiber and all kinds of things in it that as you eat them, they're helping your body. It speeds your metabolism, it feeds your cells, and it is probably the best thing for people to do for permanent weight loss and long-term health.
So when you eat, it's not just like, as we talked about, or as you heard in past, you want to eat proteins, carbs, and fats, because without one or the other, you don't want spiking your insulin, you don't want dropping your insulin. That's what kind of causes your body to go haywire, and that's when you get cravings. That's when your body will stop burning the fat that you want to burn fat efficiently. So eat meals that are protein, carb, and fat rich. That's what your body wants.
So a healthy balanced meal is a protein, a carbohydrate, and fibrous carbs, which would be vegetables. Now the reason why protein is real important to even have with vegetables, because I know many people that just have like a salad or vegetables, but you need to have a protein with it because a protein buffers the response of glucose rising in your system. Everything you eat, whether it's a piece of broccoli or it's rice or vegetables, fruit, everything you eat turns into glucose. Some foods, turn to glucose a little bit quicker, but if you have protein combined with it, that combination of protein and vegetables slows down the glucose in the system, so it drips glucose in your system, preventing that spike that we don't want. And so the combination of food is really critical. You don't want to have your vegetables and then an hour later have your protein, and then maybe you really need to eat them combined. That is the best way.
Look, in my world, the glycemic index of foods is important for diabetics, but it's not really something that we have to pay close attention to for the average person or the person that works out. And the reason is, when they did the glycemic index of foods, they were rating foods based on how fast they break down and enter the system as a sugar. That's very important to know for diabetics. But I think people take the glycemic index and try to apply it to everybody. And let me share with you why it doesn't really matter so much in the way that we eat. What I'm proposing is that you always eat a good protein with a good carb and some veggies. The glycemic index rating was based on eating the carbohydrate by itself. However, let's say white bread was the highest on the glycemic index. Do you realize that the moment you spread butter on it, the glycemic index drops very significantly because the fat slows down the entry rate of the flour? So you see, once you get into eating natural, wholesome foods with a good protein, a good carb, and a little veggie, the glycemic index is much lower, even if you eat a potato, because the protein in the veggie slows down the glycemic index or the entry rate of that potato into the bloodstream.
The whole premise behind small meals throughout the day is to constantly feed your body. So you don't want to get hungry, because when you get hungry, adverse effects happen. The fat burning process slows down and sometimes can stop. So you want to constantly feed. Your body's it's like an oven, it's like a stove. So you're constantly feeding. You're feeding nutrients. So what it's doing, it's burning fat. You can get your body regulated so much that as you're sleeping, you can literally burn fat efficiently while you're sleeping.
So many people come from this real restricted diet, and all of a sudden they're seeing that, what? I can eat 5 times a day, I can eat 6 times a day, and it scares them. But on the other hand, I do have people that come to me, they only eat 2 meals a day, and it might only be a salad. But again, the problem with that is the metabolism. They're eating twice a day and that's it, and they're only eating foods that really don't even charge up the metabolism. This is what I hear all the time. I can't believe I'm not hungry and I'm eating this food and I'm losing weight. I hear that all the time. I mean, I probably hear that 90% of the time with all my patients. The 10% I don't hear is because they're too afraid and they don't do it, and then they're not that happy with it.
It's sort of like this. I want to use a great metaphor that was incredibly memorable in one of my top infomercials of trying to get people to know the importance of using food to eat. And what I did, I was on a cruise ship with my testimonials and my crew, and I needed to come up with a way to convince you that you need to eat to lose weight. So you know what I did? We're on the beach, I got my crew, I got my testimonials, I got an audience. I lit 2 bonfires. I'm talking 2 bonfires, and it was like summertime. I'm sweating and I'm going back and forth, and you're only gonna get this once on film, and not gonna be able to do this twice. So I've got the 2 bonfires going. So what happens if I light this bonfire and I keep feeding it wood? What happens? The fire gets hotter, it gets bigger. Guess what? The wood is food, it burns it faster. That's what your metabolism does. So over here, I light a fire, a bonfire, but I ignore it. What do you think is gonna happen? It's gonna eventually smolder and go out. That's what happens to your metabolism when you starve yourself.
There's actually something called the thermic effect of food, right? So when you drink a liquid meal, you don't get much thermic effect at all. The thermic effect of food says this: if you eat a quality protein, for every 100 calories of chicken breast you eat, your body will have to burn off 20 calories of its own to do the work of breaking it down into individual amino acids, restructuring it back into proteins identical to your own body, and pulling it back into the system. That requires a lot of work. So actually, that increased your metabolic rate by about 20%. Carbohydrates, if they're complex, can increase the metabolic rate by as much as 10%. Again, that means for every 100 calories of a complex carb you eat, your body's going to burn off about 10 of its own to do the work of breaking it down. And fats have the least thermic effect, because all your body has to do is break it down into tiny enough droplets to transport through the intestinal lining. So they kind of increase your metabolic rate by 4%.
You want to retain as much as muscle you can. If you can retain more muscle, number one, you can eat more. Eating the right foods, that is. Okay, you can't go out to these fast food joints and just eat all you want. You're still going to get fat. But you can eat more, and it's going to raise your metabolism.
So what we're really talking about here is something called nutrient partitioning. I can literally show you that if you eat a combination of foods in this amount, there is no way it can feed a fat cell. In fact, this food can only be partitioned towards muscle and be burned as energy. So let's be clear. your body can only utilize so many grams of protein, carbs, and fat at one sitting, and also so many calories. If you eat more of any of those things, more protein than your body can use, fat or carbs, it is either going to be oxidized off into the air as heat, or it's going to be feeding muscle or feeding a fat cell. Now, I know that the old adage is that all weight loss is predicated on a caloric reduction. That's partially true. I can actually have a person eating more calories and have them losing more weight if they understand the effects of nutrient partitioning. So you can only assimilate, say the average woman can assimilate about 300 calories at one meal. Now let me share with you how much food that would be. It's 4 to 5 ounces of grilled chicken breast smothered in pico de gallo with a 6-ounce baked potato with fat-free Greek yogurt chives and a cup of grilled asparagus, and all of that food that I just mentioned, 300 calories. And I will tell you that virtually none of it would feed a fat cell. It would only be partitioned towards muscle and burned as energy. Now, if somebody said to you that you're supposed to eat 1,200 calories a day and you only eat 2 meals, but you eat 600 calories at each meal, you're gaining weight because your body can only process 300. So you see in this example, what I've noticed is when people eat less meals, in fact, the biggest people I meet are 2-meal-a-day eaters, because each time they sit down to eat, they can't possibly stay in that level of calories. They overeat because they're hungry and whatnot. Now, your body can only process so many grams of protein, carbs, and fat. So if I tell you that your body could use 4 to 5 ounces of good quality low-fat protein, and you eat 8, guess what? The excess protein will be converted to fat. So you see, what I believe in is this. I cannot get an athlete bigger and more muscular by cramming more calories in each feeding. The only way I can get them to be leaner and more muscular is by adding more meals of equal value spread out evenly. Now that girl that was eating 1,200 calories between 2 meals is getting heavy. She can't lose weight. In fact, her protein requirements are not going to be met because she's only eating protein at 2 meals, and the maximum she can use is, let's say, maybe 50 grams of protein between the two. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that person have a 300-calorie meal at breakfast, lunch, dinner, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. And you see this person's now eating 1,500 calories a day and actually getting leaner. So at the end of the day, I understand the idea that we all want to have a reduction of calories, but what I would say is a little bit more complicated than that. I want to see my clients understand how many calories their body can assimilate per feeding, because that's the most important thing. If you ask me how many calories should I eat in a day, I'm not having that conversation with anybody. What you should ask me is how many nutrients and calories can my body assimilate per feeding. So you see, my objective is to use high quality foods that are nutrient dense, and so that the person can be totally full and satisfied and actually eat more food and get less calories.
Because you can get 2 different people doing a 1,200 calorie diet and you're going to get a totally different outcome. Example, I did a consultation, My 600 Pound Life, Dr. Now. I was asked to help this woman who was 600 pounds. The reason why they called me in is because she could not lose weight. And she swore to him that she was only doing 1,500 calories. And he didn't believe it, and he wasn't believing it. And so we had a discussion. And in our conversation, what I found out is she'd get up in the morning and she would do 500 calories at lunch, but she was doing 900 or 1,000 calories at dinner eating with the family. Now, that is not going to be conducive to weight loss because you can only assimilate a certain amount of calories in a sitting. If you eat 1,000 calories one time a day in one sitting, you are not going to lose weight because what your body can't assimilate, it's going to be stored into fat. So when we discussed eating the 1,200 or 1,500 calories, 300 calories 5 times a day instead of twice a day, she was able to lose 86 pounds so she could have the surgery. So it's not the amount of calories per day you're eating, it's what are you eating individually, how many calories you're eating at each meal, and to make sure that it's balanced right.